AITA for not wanting to forgive my parents who used to be amazing because of one mistake they made in the past. I'm 21 now, but this story starts a few years back. Growing up, I thought my parents were perfect. They were supportive, attentive, and I honestly felt like I had one of those picture-perfect families. My parents were there for me and my two siblings, attending every school event, helping with homework, and even joining in on silly traditions like family pizza night. They were always reliable, the kind of parents you could call on for anything. Except for one rule they kept firm: no phone calls after 10 p.m. From as far back as I can remember, every night at 10 p.m. sharp, both of their phones would go on, do not disturb. They said it was their time to unwind, to escape the demands of work and parenting for a few hours. They were clear with us about it too. If it's an emergency, they'd say, call again in the morning. If we get a call in the middle of the night, we won't be answering. Even though I was young, I respected their boundaries. They were so consistent and caring in every other way that this one boundary seemed reasonable. I just didn't realize how it would come back to hurt me. When I turned 18, I took a job as a server at a local restaurant. It wasn't glamorous, but I was excited to make my own money. The only downside was the late hours. Some shifts had me working until midnight or later. My parents were supportive of the job, but didn't offer any adjustments to their no-calls rule. I'd bring it up once or twice, saying, hey, what if something happens? What if I need you? They'd gently remind me that I was an adult now, and with their full-time jobs, they value their sleep. Again, I just let it slide. I thought, okay, maybe I won't need them at all. Until that one night. It was a Tuesday, a cold, rainy one in October. I was wrapping up a shift, exhausted but excited to finally be heading home. As I drove, the rain started coming down harder, turning the road slick. I don't remember exactly what happened next, but I know I hit a patch of water and lost control of my car. The next thing I remember was the world spinning around me, glass shattering, my head slamming into something hard. And then, darkness. I woke up in a daze, my whole body screaming in pain. My leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and blood was trickling down my face. I was disoriented, panicked, and all I could think was I need my parents. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone and dialed my mom. Straight to voicemail. My dad's number? Same thing. My heart sank as I realized they'd kept their phones on, do not disturb, like every other night. Desperation took over, and I called them over and over, hoping that, just this once, they'd feel something, anything, and pick up. But they didn't. I felt this overwhelming sense of abandonment right then. Here I was alone in the middle of a terrifying night, needing the people who promised to always be there. I needed them, but they weren't coming. In a fog of pain and panic, I managed to call my grandparents. Thank God, they picked up. They came to the hospital as fast as they could, and they even tried to contact my parents. But, as expected, they couldn't reach them either. By the time my parents finally saw the calls, I was already out of surgery. They arrived at the hospital around 7 a.m., visibly shaken and devastated by what had happened. But, to me, it felt like they were too late. They hadn't been there when I needed them most. The aftermath of that night wasn't just physical. It changed me on a fundamental level. I didn't just suffer injuries. I was left with a permanent disability that affects me daily. I spent weeks in the hospital, and my grandparents were by my side every step of the way. My parents apologized, but I couldn't get over the feeling of betrayal. I knew they hadn't intended to abandon me, but the outcome felt the same. Even when I went home, my relationship with my parents was strained. I could barely look at them without feeling resentment. They tried to make amends by offering to drive me to physical therapy and doctor's appointments, but I refused their help. I leaned on my grandparents instead, who continued to be there for me. My parents didn't understand why I wouldn't let them help, but I couldn't bring myself to let them in again. They promised to change their behavior, and to their credit, they did. My siblings have told me that since that night, my parents keep their phones on at all hours, ready to answer any call, anytime. But for me, it's too little, too late. They only changed after it was me who had to suffer because of their stubborn rule. Over time, I grew more independent. I found a job that accommodated my needs, saved up, and finally moved out. When I did, I went no contact with my parents. My grandparents tried to intervene, saying I was punishing them too harshly for something they couldn't have foreseen. They argued that my parents had learned from their mistake, that they felt genuine guilt, and that they'd do anything to make it up to me. But here's the thing, there's no undoing what happened. That night is seared into my memory as one of the most traumatic moments of my life. And I went through it alone because they weren't there. It's not something I can easily forgive, even if they've done everything right since then. I know they're sorry, and I know they've changed. But part of me feels like I'm still the abandoned girl in that wrecked car, alone and terrified, while the two people I depended on were peacefully asleep. I know my decision to go no contact has hurt my grandparents, and I feel guilty about that. They've been my rock, and I hate disappointing them. But they don't understand what it's like to feel so utterly alone and abandoned by the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. And as much as I appreciate their loyalty to my parents, I can't just forgive and forget when I'm the one living with the aftermath of that night. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to forgive my parents for this one mistake?